So if the trend is going in the wrong direction and over time you're actually introducing more detrimental changes than you are beneficial changes, then it doesn't matter if you have more time. That actually works against you.
Do you believe in evolution?
I believe in microevolution. I believe that there are real evolutionary processes. I'm skeptical about what's called universal common descent. And I'm also skeptical about the creative power of the mutation selection mechanism. But that mechanism turns out not to do a good job of explaining the origin of birds or other major animal groups in the first place. So modification, yes. Innovation, no.
But modification over massive amounts of time, don't you think that would eventually lead to new groups? Because a lot of new groups have similar origins, or at least origins from one ancestor.
Joe has a good point. So it's a fair question, and it's interesting to see how Dr. Stephen Meyer answers it.
Well, time,
like primates.
Yeah, time was always the hero of the plot. But let me just run a couple of arguments by you, and let's see what you think. Okay. In our computer world, we know that if you start randomly changing the zeros and ones in a section of digital code, you're going to degrade the function of that code long before you come up with a new string for making a new program or operating system. The functional sequences they're highly isolated in what's called sequence space. You can change a few things and still retain function. But after a very few number of changes, you're going to degrade the function, and long before you come up with a new function.
That is the fundamental issue, so I'm glad that he mentions it.
Now, the Darwinian mechanism starts with the idea that there are random changes in those digital bit strings, those sequences of A's, C's, G's, and T's. And based on our experience in the computer world, we would expect that random changes are going to, again, degrade those strings long before they're capable of building a new protein.
So I really appreciate Dr. Stephen Meyer's answer to the question, but let's see if we can expand on it just a little bit.
Written in historical records, documented in Tacitus and Josephus. For those who don't believe us, check the marks of architecture written on a fetus. Neural nets and error correcting codes complete us.
Chaos theory.
Reality.
So I was watching a clip of Joe Rogan recently where Stephen C. Meyer was a guest, and Joe Rogan was asking him about his belief in evolution. Steve Meyer said, "I believe in microevolution, which is small changes within a species over time, things like finch beaks or maybe melanin changes within populations of moths." But he said he was more skeptical of macroevolution, which is changes of one animal kind to another. And he was extremely skeptical of abiogenesis, which is the formation of life from non-life from strictly chemical precursors. So no guidance, no intelligence. Okay. Joe pushed back a little bit on him and he said, yeah, but if you believe in microevolution, isn't macroevolution just microevolution with a lot of time? So if you give it enough time, wouldn't these small changes add up to big changes? And Steve Meyer said, yes, time is the hero of the plot, or at least in the Darwinist mind it is.
Yeah, time was always the hero of the plot.
So it is true that over time, small changes could add up. That was the point that Joe was making. But what Steve was saying was that small errors can also add up. Small errors compound over time. And so the question before us is, what is the general trend? If I have a complex system and I start introducing unguided variation into it, if I keep making changes, am I more likely to improve the system with that unguided noise, or am I more likely to degrade it? Okay. And I think we intuitively all know the answer to this, right? At least if we're not looking at it from a Darwinian perspective, if we remove our Darwinist hat and we're honest with ourselves. If I gave you functional computer code and I said, start making random changes, unguided changes, am I more likely to degrade the code over time or improve it with my random introduction of changes? Clearly, we're going to degrade it. If I give you an automobile and a hammer and I say, make unguided changes to this automobile, by hitting it in an unguided way, are you more likely to improve the automobile, make it more functional, make it more capable, or are you more likely to destroy it? If we just look at leaving a car in an abandoned lot over time, you have the unguided forces of nature working on it. Is it improving over time or is it degrading? Okay. So you may say, yeah, but those aren't reproducing things, right? We have natural selection for organisms. But natural selection can only select among the options that it has in front of it. And so if as a whole, in net, you are degrading a system faster than you're improving it, yes, it could pick the best of the next generation, but if all of the next generation are slightly worse than the previous generation, then over time, the trend goes in the wrong direction. Okay. So unguided noise, unguided variation doesn't create messages. It destroys messages. This is the whole field of information theory and communication engineering. It's trying to work against unguided changes that have been introduced into your communication channel. Okay. I think of it as that quip of the salesman who says, yeah, I lose a little on each sale, but I make up for it in volume. So if the trend is going in the wrong direction and over time you're actually introducing more detrimental changes than you are beneficial changes, then it doesn't matter if you have more time. That actually works against you. It works not in your favor. Okay. This is like a casino. So you're a gambler, you walk into a casino and the house has a slight edge. The more time you spend in the casino, the more likely you are to go bankrupt and lose your bankroll. Yes, you could hit a jackpot, but guess what? You don't get to leave the casino if you're an organism. You have to continue now under those same forces. So again, if the general trend is away from increased utility, if it's towards disutility, then the more time you play the game, the more likely you are to head towards extinction, the more likely you are to head towards eradication. Okay. So the gambler could start off and maybe loses a little on each hand, eventually hits a jackpot. Great. Now his pot is bigger, but now he has to keep playing. And still the same trend holds that in expectation, am I more likely to degrade the organism or improve it by using unguided variation? The trend is towards degradation when we're looking at unguided variation. How do we know this, right? So if you think about all the ways there are to destroy a complex system to make it work worse versus the number of ways there are to improve it, right? So I can, if I have an aircraft and I start pulling wires in an unguided manner, many of those changes will cause the aircraft to fly either half as fast or not at all. Very few of them will cause the aircraft to fly at a greater rate, right? So the question is, in expectation, am I more likely to improve a system through unguided variation or degrade it? And the answer is we're much more likely to destroy a system by introducing unguided changes than we are to ever improve it. And so the more time you have in that process, the more likely you are to degrade your system. So thank you for joining me. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please consider subscribing, consider liking this video as well. That will help this video to actually go out to more people. So thank you, take care, and God bless.
Chaos Theory.